Hello, everyone, and welcome to this AMBA and BGA webinar on emerging trends and the future of business school education in association with Salesforce.org. I'm David Woodsell, Director of Marketing and Communications at AMBA and BGA, and I'm looking forward to an hour of interesting insight. So shortly, I will hand over to our panel chair, Baz ten Holte, Senior Regional Vice President of Higher Education in EMEA at Salesforce.org, to start the conversation. But before I do, just some housekeeping. We want the session to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, just add them to the question panel or chat box, and we'll be able to get through as many of those as we can towards the end of the session. If you miss anything, don't worry, because the recording and the slides will be available in the post-event comms and on the AMBA and BGA websites within about a week. So that's all from me. Without further ado, Baz.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. This is Bas speaking at Salesforce, coming to you from the Netherlands. I'm the lead for the Salesforce.org education team in EMEA, and in my role, I try to understand the needs and challenges of the European higher education sector, and then help to transform with them into innovative institutions that support the growth and expansion of the education industry with the Salesforce Education Cloud. And part of that has seen in the last couple of months and years, sometimes due to demographics and sometimes due to COVID effects, a drastic change to the way that many of our institutions do business, go to market, reach out to candidates, engage with alumni, and how they are trying to also build this lifelong engagement in a hybrid manner. So at Salesforce, we work with institutions in every industry, from retail to finance, including the education sector all across the world. And our goal is to help them all to be successful with their digital transformation. To date, we support around 6,000 education institutions globally, including about 1,000 in EMEA, and many of the top business schools that are also featured on the panel today. Our journey to develop the education cloud really started with one goal: to transform the #1 CRM digital platform into digital foundation to meet your needs and challenges. So the education cloud, all up, provides a unique and enriched experience throughout the entire educational journey, but also the institutional journey, enabling you to drive the success of your students from anywhere with one connected platform for lifelong learning. And a thing to add there, which we've consistently gotten as feedback, is not just the student experience, but the staff experience focus, because obviously your staff members have been going through a lot. They have had to really adapt, quickly change, have seen their workday expand. So making sure that their needs are at the forefront before any larger projects are undertaken is really of key importance. So now let's begin with the webinar. I'll introduce the panelists, and then I'll stop sharing the slides. So we're joined today by Rachel McGurr, the Global Director of Marketing and Sales at INSEAD, and Julian Rowell, Director of MBA Programs at the University of Edinburgh. So thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your insights. Rachel and Julian, could you each give a brief introduction about your background and your current role?
Okay, I will start. Really delighted to be here today. Rachel, I've been working in higher education for the last 16 or 17 years, so quite a long time. And before that, I was actually working in IT. So I was using Salesforce actually in the 2000s, a while ago. I think in terms of my career, it's always been focused on marketing and sales, different aspects, but really thinking about how we could have an integral marketing and sales journey. This has been a huge focus, and bringing in branding, bringing in also the value that you can deliver to customers. And technology, as I started in technology, working in a software company, this has been something that's followed me through. And I've tried to bring into the education roles the roles that I've held in higher education, and thinking how we can really use technology to benefit students as they go through their study journey, but also how we can use technology to engage with people all over the world. And a major focus for me has been the internationalization different degree programs, and I've worked in three different universities. I've been based in France, but working for pretty international schools. So really looking at how do you engage with people all over the world to bring them together for their degree experience. And technology is something that definitely has helped schools to develop these strategies and really improve, I think, in this area. There's been a huge advance in this area over the past 20 years. And what's really exciting to see, and I'm sure my colleague from Edinburgh will agree, is that European schools have also been really making huge progress in this area in bringing diversity into the classroom. So that's me.
Okay. Yeah, good afternoon from sunny Edinburgh in Scotland. So I'm Julian Rule. So I'm an entrepreneur by background. So I spent the first 16, 17 years of my working life building a company called Eurocamp, which is a holiday company. So Bas, I introduced it into the Netherlands as well years ago. We took it from a startup, a very small startup with just two of us, into a big, fully listed, stock market listed multinational company. So it did that, and my principal roles there, when we had principal roles, were as a group sales and marketing director. So really with Rachel combining sales and marketing functions. I then moved into national museum development, being part of the team that built and developed the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which was Britain's biggest new build national museum. I did that for a few years, starting to that. And then for the last couple of decades or so, I run a consultancy company, but I've been working with business schools, teaching in 10, 12 different countries, sort of management roles as well as teaching roles. So currently my key role is as director of MBA programs here at the University of Edinburgh. I also do some research, and my research topic is looking at the impact of the 2008 financial crisis on the reputation of corporate organizations. So yeah, delighted to be here and looking forward to joining the discussion.
Great, thank you so much, Rachel and Julian. Very interesting to hear your very diverse backgrounds, but then ultimately being at the education industry to give back and help pass that knowledge to the next generation. So great to hear. So as a little bit of an icebreaker, maybe to open the discussion, I'm sure that from all of the companies that you engage with, or the trends that you hear about, the word digital transformation, or as we're hiply trying to abbreviate it now, DX, has many different meanings to many different people. So could I invite you both, if you hear the term or think about the term digital transformation, what's top of mind, and how do you think it impacts your institution now or going forward?
Yeah, I think obviously many different things coming into digital transformation. I think definitely companies have looked to digital transformation to find efficiencies in how they do things and the processes, and to gain professionalism, I think, in the way that we do things. In the higher education sector, it's true that sometimes we are a little bit behind our colleagues in the corporate world. And I really feel that this has been something that's been looked at as an opportunity to improve efficiencies. I think also from a marketing perspective, when you're dealing, as we do in business schools, with very large funnels of prospective students, and then whittling that down gradually to select those people that are going to be in the classroom, being able to deliver a personalized journey to a mass of a really quite a large mass of prospective students is something that digital transformation is really impactful for us to be able to do. And I think also the other side, which is maybe we're just on the tip of the iceberg, is really to do with innovation. How can we kind of look at, I think, digital transformation to innovate in the way in which we deliver higher education classes? There's been a huge advance in the last couple of years in this area, but also in how we build the journey for our prospective students, and then alumni. So this is obviously for the higher education sector, we have customers that are for life. and that stay with us for life. So how do we bring that journey together, and how do we make it a quality journey and use digital transformation to help us do that? So leveraging technology, I think, is going to be very key over the next few years.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And yeah, I also hear you talk about like using it to innovate, and something we'll get to talk about later today is how diversity and inclusion can benefit from these new models of delivery, where it may not be requiring all the time people to displace themselves to campuses, and there could be other entry fees and models for students that may not have the physical capacity or the financial or let's say time on their hands to do the full programs that we know from your types of institutions from the past. So thank you. Julian, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think the latter point that Rachel was talking about, you're just talking about, the opportunity to democratize business school education via digital transformation is obviously an important one there. For me, when I think of digital transformation, I suppose in a slightly academic piece of terminology, I would look at it in terms of how we can integrate digital technology into everything that we do. And that sounds very obvious, and perhaps if you come from Rachel's background, it's what she was brought up on. But I think in universities, it's not a given at all. And so I think it's very much, as we start to think about digital transformation, it's very much about rethinking the customer experience, but very importantly also rethinking about what value actually means. And I'm sure we'll sort of touch on value as we go through the webinar today. So I think digital transformation helps us to, if you like, apply new ways of doing things to achieve outcomes that previously we wouldn't have thought about achieving. And I think that's what's most important. And I think in terms of business schools in particular, but more widely about universities as well, it's about, on a micro level, recognizing also that the classroom has changed. And we'll talk about perhaps how it's changed as a result of COVID, but it's going to continue to change. And so we're in a sort of, if you like, a journey of constant change. And so we have to therefore try and work out what, as university professionals, we can do to leverage that. One final point, though, is digital transformation isn't new. I've been involved in digital transformation and adoption since the 1990s, so it's not a new thing. But I think what is new is this. Firstly, the pace of change is ridiculously quick. So just when we think we've mastered one way of doing things, somebody smart comes in and introduces a whole range of doing things in a different way. I think that is hugely challenging. The other thing, which I think is hugely important in terms of the university and business school sector, is this. When I first started getting involved in digital transformation things in the holiday industry or whatever, we would introduce things as suppliers, and we wouldn't really think very much about the customer involvement in them. It was about making things more efficient, as Rachel had spoken about. But now, of course, we have a marketplace that in many ways is more proficient digitally than a lot of the people that work in the actual sector that is delivering. And that, I think, represents some huge challenges, because how do you keep up as professionals in higher education with a marketplace that potentially has transformed digitally much more quickly than yourselves?
Yeah, I think both good points, and the final one is hit home for a lot of employees of companies that have this ability to continue to learn and continue to invest in themselves through education, and you can start to see that even ourselves as employees in the IT sector, we are quite unforgiving if it goes about the online experience, right? So we want personalized information ready at our fingertips at 2 in the morning or 8 in the morning, whenever we feel like going and researching, and so having these journeys personalized, customized is important, and is indeed a challenge when the pace of change is so fast and the needs are changing. So then, to obviously look at the other end, what do you see as your biggest challenge or opportunity associated with this in your type of institution today? And maybe then Julian, start with you on this one.
Okay. Challenge is not, I don't know where you start really, to be honest. Let's have the next 3 hours about those. But I was just looking at them. And in fact, what you could say in many ways is, I suppose, the challenges are also the opportunities. I think if we look at some of the key opportunities in front of us, and especially based on digital transformation, the use of technology and so on, is the fact that if you like, the world is now our classroom. We might not all have liked the fact that that's happened, but it is. So the opportunity is, in some ways, it's as wide as we want to make it. And therefore, geography is, for me, the major opportunity that's resulting in terms of digital transformation, because we can be everything to everywhere if we can do it properly. However, as a sector, we have a huge amount of challenges. As a business school sector, we are seeing increasing numbers of business schools starting up all the time. So the growth in business school sector in the last 10 years and the last 20 years has been massive. And therefore, I would have said that there are very few sectors in any industry where you've seen the amount of competition grow in the way that we've seen it in business schools. So I think that's a huge challenge. Second challenge is, of course, you can now get business type of degrees from all sorts of institutions who are not INSEAD or the University of Edinburgh. There are lots of, if you like, professional service providers or organizations like the University of Law or whatever, who are now delivering their own degrees. And they're basically saying we can deliver them smarter, cheaper, for a shorter amount of time. And they're very much, in a sense, commoditizing business education. I'm not saying they do a bad thing at all, but they do things in a different way. Other challenges, very important for business schools, which is the meaning of a business degree. What's its worth? And as a director of MBA programs, everybody who takes an MBA program at the University of Edinburgh, as with INSEAD, is making a very big financial commitment. And if they're doing full-time programs, they're making a huge time commitment and a moving out of job commitment. So it's a massive, great commitment they're making. And so I think a challenge that we have to look at all the time is, are we able to add the value? What's the real return on investment? Because the investment is way, way bigger than the financial investment. So I think that's another challenge. And then I've got sort of a couple of final challenges. A big challenge that we're facing is that the perceptions of our students is changing. So if we go back when I first started teaching on MBA programs, which is 20 years ago or so, everybody was focused on becoming a Big Four consultant or an investment banker and making lots and lots of money. Now, a lot of the students we see, especially at Edinburgh, are basically saying, we want to look at things in a more meaningful way. We don't want to be investment bankers anymore, but we'd like to start our own social enterprise, or we'd like to contribute to society. So suddenly, there's a very big change. It's not just about the sort of the high salary ticket at the end of it. And I think, therefore, then to bring it all together finally with all that, and now looking at digital transformation, how do we really develop a real unique selling point, A, for the sector, and B, for ourselves as individual universities? Because, if you like, the playing field is changing all the time.
And very well put, Julian. I think with the concept of having more societal impact, that puts a little bit of an axe to the root of the rankings, right? Where people look at what is the differential in income from going into a program, going out, and how can you have that meaningfully compared, if you will, to allow people really that insight before they make a choice. Yeah. Rachel, I guess that Julian has mowed the grass in front of your feet, as we say in Dutch, a little bit potentially. But do you have any remaining sort of top challenges that you'd like to throw in here, or shall we move on to the next topics?
Yeah, I think maybe just on the more very marketing kind of side of things, definitely a big challenge for business schools and universities is the scale. So we are basically operating in terms of our digital campaigns and outreach we are also competing for space, not just against each other, but against corporates. And we're also trying, I know this is a really big challenge at INSEAD, we often talk about it actually in our Salesforce Steerco, is how do we put in place effective strategies in terms of digital transformation when we are such a smaller scale organization. So this is definitely, we are global, we are worldwide, we are covering the world, we are trying to get diversity, but obviously we do not have the same budgets, the same investment as companies that are operating also on the same channels. So we're maybe operating, we are competing sometimes for slightly, we're specializing in terms of our campaigns on different words, on different searches, but a lot of the time we are actually competing for space with also other corporates. So this is definitely a challenge that we see at INSEAD. And also another maybe challenge that we have with this competition is around differentiation. And this goes back to what Julian said about the competition and what we're offering. And I think that as the market is becoming much more mature and students have much more solid expectations, and as I say, it's becoming a much more individual journey that they're looking for, I think this is going to be a challenge for business schools to really think about how they can offer programs within which there is more flexibility and people can build tracks and people can really build what they need in terms of a student experience to help them realize their projects, their ambitions as they move forward. So people will make very different choices as they finish their degrees. And how do we accommodate that? How do we bring them all together and benefit from this diversity and sharing together and learning together, but then preparing them to go off onto many different tracks as they're definitely not all looking for that consulting experience or banking experience anymore. They're looking for a much more diverse career outcome. So this is also a challenge and an opportunity, I think, for business.
Okay, no, thanks for that. And I think, Julian, to go back to what you said earlier in the introduction, where your field of research on the impact after 2008, I think we've seen a distinct change after that, especially in the first couple of years. Many of the business school professors were obviously still, in that sort of pre-2008 mindset, where it was all about shareholder value, and the word stakeholder sort of crept in after that, and we looked at the impact on society. So interesting cross references there. So Rachel, staying with you, obviously you're the global director of marketing, involved in recruitment and admissions. What are some of the changes that you've made or that you've witnessed in how you reach out and how you engage with prospective students and executives?
So definitely the last 2 years has been a huge turnaround for us. We used to do a lot of physical engagements. We used to travel quite a lot to meet people. And we have an amazing alumni network at INSEAD and really diverse. So we have people really all over the world. Each MBA class has, 88 nationalities and people coming from even more work countries. So I think this has been a huge change for us, and we've definitely looked to digital to help us to provide that quality experience and exchanges with our customers or potential future customers. But this has definitely been challenging because we saw our journey as being a higher value perhaps than others because we were able to have these physical interactions, which really did come to a standstill. So this is something that we're currently trying to find the balance with, and where do we go back to? What is the future balance of that blended experience, bringing in-person exchanges and networking together with digital experiences. So we're really searching at the moment to find that balance in the future.
Yeah. Okay. No, thanks for that. And speaking as somebody who's obviously used to going to some of these conferences and student fairs and MBA fairs, it was always a lovely perk as well for people that work in the institutions, right? To go off to Beijing or to Istanbul or to go to international education fairs. And that's where that other comment from myself is relevant about the staff experience and staff, let's say, longevity in role, because a lot of people were attracted to these elements of that job, and now, you know, it's all the information comes to you digital, which is great in terms of understanding where people are in the funnel, what they're interested in, what they look at. So you get maybe a much bigger digital footprint, but you don't get to really convince people, speak to people on the spot, which you know, especially when it is done in a nice exotic destination where people purposely go to either to position your degree or your programs, and they come searching for it, is very different, right? So now you're a click away from the next internet shopping or ordering food for the night, and it's a different, more etherical approach, I would say.
Yeah, it definitely, just the last comment on that, I think what we have seen is that you have people that walk in that were not expecting to meet your school, that didn't necessarily know about your school, maybe didn't think they had the right level, maybe didn't kind of have that in their scope. And definitely those people, they're much more difficult to touch through digital, because they didn't know they were going to meet you. They didn't have the intention. They went to an event kind of thinking, I'm just searching for where I'm going to go. And I think those conversations definitely were crucial to also finding maybe more diverse profiles and typical profiles that maybe would have not had the confidence to apply to an MBA program, and that really bring a wealth of diversity to our program. So this is also something that I think, you know, in terms of digital and the companies working to help us engage digitally, this is definitely something that I think is a little bit of a gap, is those more spontaneous conversations and more spontaneous meetings that happen when we're on the ground, that are more difficult to instigate digitally.
Yeah, no, good point. And yeah, I can immediately see how it will be impossible, or maybe even intimidating, to have a chatbot on the website or a form to fill in and a motivation letter on the first contact. You know, if somebody just basically wants to pop in for a chat and see if it could be something for them, as you said, and I can see how that would be against the diversity agenda. Yeah. Okay. Gillian, obviously you're a program director. You have several functions that support the MBA programs, and in the pandemic, as you already mentioned, the expectations about technology and service have increased among students and other clients. How has your institution been able to adapt to that?
Well, it was a rapid adaptation, because, you know, we can go back now 2 years, can't we? And quite literally, 1 minute we were doing normal classroom driven MBA programs, and the next minute we were locked down. It wasn't as if someone said to us, in 3 months time we're going to lock you down, or in 6 months time, or next year. It was, you're locked down. And therefore we had to rapidly adapt to what had happened. Personally, I was in a fortunate position, because I'd done at other places, I've been very heavily involved in online learning. And so myself and certain colleagues who were sort of pretty experienced of this sort of got together and worked together as a sort of, if you like, an implementation type of team to rapidly work with our colleagues to essentially move from the classroom to online. It wasn't even hybrid. It was moving from one place to another, because at least in the UK, we were completely locked down for a number of months. So I think that it was a rapid change. Actually, I don't think there are many good things about COVID at all. I wish it hadn't happened. But one thing that it did was it meant that a huge amount of academic and professional service colleagues had to adapt to something that they were slightly afraid of doing, but they had to adapt to it very fast. And I think what I saw was that how well they adapted, how well the whole business school, as well as the whole university, just got together so rapidly, so quickly. And I think 2 or 3 weeks after after we'd been forced into lockdown, I think we were delivering fantastic degrees across the business school and across the university. And I think if you'd actually said that to people within the university, this is what you're going to be doing, they would have just laughed at you. But actually, that's what happened. So, and I think we adapted well. I think where I am with my MBA programs at the moment is we were actually able to get back into the classroom even the previous academic year from the spring onwards. So we were pretty good, but we're quite restricted in numbers into the classroom and so on. So we had to do quite a lot of adaptation. And certainly for us in this academic year, because of Scottish government regulations, we've had to do quite a lot of hybrid teaching, which is part online, part offline. But to be honest, what we've seen is it's a much, much stronger form of teaching. So I think that for us, it's the learning has enabled us to, I think, improve the student experience. But one thing for us, which is different to Rachel and INSEAD, is that UK business schools are principally part of UK universities. UK universities are government funded, not-for-profit organizations, which means that on the one hand, we've made some great progress. And on the other hand, the government is saying, we want everybody back in the classroom all the time. Because the government has been getting, especially from undergraduate programs, huge complaints from students who said, we paid all this money for our undergraduate programs and practically everything we're doing is from our bedroom or something like that. That's become a very big political issue, which you only get in a sector which is very much government run, because we're not private business schools. So on the one hand, there's been great adaptation, a great desire to do things differently. On the other hand, there's a big political agenda in the UK, which is saying, we want you to do things as they were in 2019. So it's how you bridge that gap.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. I think the proverb is necessity is the mother of invention. And especially having worked myself in education for 25 years, working with a lot of people that would like things to change and improve, but would then, especially in a faculty-based university, be faced with people that say, well, we've done it for 4,000 years and there's a reason for that, or we're conservative and we're proud of it. Some of these statements will obviously be made, but at some point everybody had to do something. Now it's just I would say the reflection that we have is that the things you did initially to adapt to the lockdown, to the crisis, to implement online learning is not to say, okay, we've done that and now we can move on, but to go back and take a look and see if students have come along for the ride. What about the mental health? What about attrition rates? What about the adaptations of teachers? Because it's all different to have a lecture hall of 300-400 people in front of you, or to be bombarded 24/7 with emails and questions, all the way from I don't have access to the course, which could be student system to learning management system integration issue that in the past you could say, well, just sit in the back, take notes, and we'll sort it out after class. That those days are gone. So a little bit more challenging from that perspective. Yeah. So no, I can see the impact. In terms of the international cohorts, and we've touched on that a little bit before. Your MBA program, as well as Rachel's, attracts a huge number of international students. So how do you think that will change? Or have you already seen an impact to the diversity or backgrounds, and how do you think that will be here to last as you go back to the more campus-based, as you said, politically motivated or hybrid models?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether digital transformation or Brexit is my big issue, to be honest, because we, in terms of our full-time program is really an international program with people from all over the world. And I suppose one of the sort of micro issues that we're facing is that it's much more difficult now and less attractive for people from the European Union to come over to the UK to study on an MBA program. So I think Brexit lurks in the background and is a sort of, is something we could have well done without, but there we are. In terms of looking at how we recruited for this academic year, so this is the sort of academic year that was really came on the back of the big COVID issues, but also how we're looking at the academic year coming. I'd have to say I've not really seen anything negative appear in terms of recruitment and demand. I couldn't really say that I've seen, other than the Brexit issue, that much of a change in terms of geography. I mean, we're always some years we get more people from South America, some years we get more people from North America, some years you get more people from India, some years you get more people from other places. It sort of tends to change from year to year. But I think in general terms, what I think I've seen is that recruitment and demand remains very, very strong. However, I think where some business schools might face the challenges, if you're INSEAD, then you have a major, huge reputation and you're based in a major city. University of Edinburgh Business School, you're part of the 22nd highest ranked university in the world in a very, very attractive city in which to study. So I think in some cases we might be slightly buffered from changes in recruitment because there are some very strong reasons for people to come to our institutions. I think if you are in smaller industrial cities with smaller universities, potentially the desire to travel and spend a year in those places might perhaps be slightly reduced. But from my perspective, I've not really seen any major changes.
Okay, thank you for that. And we have some questions from the audience coming in, which is great. So we'll get into those in a minute. Rachel, one thing that I'd love to hear your perspective and INSEAD's perspective on is with this focus to move more to lifelong learning, as you said, having customers, both corporate and individuals for life. What about the expansion to new course offerings? So are you already thinking about micro-credentials or more and more non-degree courses, a bigger embedding with industry, doing partnerships or joint degrees? Could you comment for us on that?
Yeah, I think INSEAD, obviously, I mean, our MBA program is very dominant. We have 1,000 students a year, so it's a big machine. So that has been, that was the source of the school. But very quickly after that launch, we did launch executive education. So this was launched in the 60s and has been developed. So I think INSEAD definitely has been a leader in the executive education space and has already gone quite deeply. And even before the pandemic, we were delivering quite a lot of courses online, and we were also looking at kind of stackable courses to make certificates and to give qualifications. So this is definitely something that we've worked on a lot and is being developed currently. So however, I would say the thing that we haven't looked at yet is how this this model could move into the degree space. So at INSEAD, we really build a cohort, and this is something that for us is very important, is kind of, and we call it crafting a class. So it's making sure that we bring together the right people in the classroom from diverse backgrounds, whether that be geographies or other types of diversity, and having them come together and share their experience and really form a very strong class. So at INSEAD, we have reunions, we bring our classes together every couple of years, they come together. So there's a very kind of strong sense of bonding within each cohort. So this is something definitely to think about with more flexible learning models. How do you keep that sense of belonging that is very strong and carries through to our alumni? How do you keep that sense of belonging if people are going to maybe do their course with maybe 4 different classes and stack those together to make their degree? So this is something that we definitely are discussing and thinking about how those models can work. And also thinking about online, hybrid, and blended models. So INSEAD was very much an in-person experience for degree programs before we went into the pandemic. Then we obviously pivoted 100% to online. And then we quite quickly started pivoting back to hybrid. So hybrid for me, and this is how we define it at INSEAD, is hybrid is when you have a class that's being taught live with people in the classroom, and there are also people connected elsewhere online, but they can participate fully in the class. So what does this mean in terms of technology? We've re-equipped all of our lecture halls so that the quality for those people outside of the classroom can be the same as those inside the classroom, and they can ask questions, be heard by the rest of the class. They can be seen on the screen, and we really feel that they are actually in the classroom, and they feel that as well. So hybrid for me, if you get it right, is making sure that the experience is seamless, whether it's online or whether it's in the classroom. I think blended is really the approach where some of your classes are going to be live and some of the classes are going to be delivered online. They could be live online, or they could be asynchronous, where people connect on demand to the class at a time that suits them, to take in different pieces of content and to learn, to have a class that's probably pre-recorded in some instances. So I think now what we're looking at is kind of how do we bring all of those different models together to give a really positive experience. And I think for what Julian said about the fact that, this has been very positive. And I think at INSEAD it has been positive, and the professors were very surprised to see that actually they enjoyed teaching online. There were things that they saw as being benefits, and actually giving more value to the students. And also the students probably, at the beginning panicked quite a lot about what does this mean? What is the ROI? What am I going to get out of this experience? INSEAD is a pretty high price tag to come into our programs. So this was definitely a concern. And I think we were reassured by the compliments that we did have also from students about the quality of the experience online. So maybe just to touch on lifelong learning. At INSEAD, as I say, we do have a very strong community with our alumni, and we've really looked through the pandemic at how can we give a bit more value back to our alumni. So organising much more, I think, many more exchanges with alumni, panel discussions, groups on different topics. So bringing our community together and facilitating more that community to come together and discuss different topics that they're facing. So we've definitely tried to do that. And in terms of lifelong learning, also think about the degree as being really the start of the experience with the school. And it's not just then that you are alumni and you kind of come together every so often for a nice social event, but that the degree is really this starting point of your journey, and that you will come back several times during your career to the school that you studied at. You may also look for other organizations, but the school actually invites you back to update, to look at new topics, and to keep learning as you move through your career at the different stages. So this is something that we didn't necessarily do so much in the past, but we feel is really something that's valued by our community. And we've seen that when we've said, oh, would you like to come back to study a new course, we do get a really good response from people that did maybe the MBA program 20 years ago, and that feel that now they need to actually dive a bit deeper into today's topics, relevant topics for them. So
yeah, okay. Now I think very, very interesting, and I think it helps to address also one of the questions that we had. Maybe Julian, if you can comment additionally. So the audience question is, how does an increase in international students impact your diversity and inclusion strategies? Because you now have much more of a melting pot of backgrounds and campus, physically and virtually. How have you worked to create a culture that's inclusive and that's able to provide that unique student experience for global profiles? So maybe a few words on that for you, Julian.
I think especially, I mean, if we look at our executive MBA program, that's not particularly international. But if we look at our full-time program, which is completely international, I think that what you have to do is you have to have a mindset in which you understand that the people in the audience, the people who are paying to come on the programs, are in many cases from different backgrounds and cultures than perhaps the people who are delivering And one of the things that we do right at the start of our programs each year is to start exploring the difference in culture between different nationalities. And a very good example of this, and we try and do these things right from the start, is that we often have Chinese, so we have quite a lot of Chinese students, and we often have Chinese students who recognize that they don't come necessarily from the same democracies as a lot of other students. And what they say, and what we have to try and do to sort of develop this diversity, is to say, look, they say, you know, we come from this country. This is what we do. This is how we live. This is how we work. And it's different to how you live and work in Europe or the United States, as an example. And I think that, therefore, we've always got to have that sort of open mind right at the beginning. And one of the key things is the sort of the melting pot is then when you have cross-geographical teams working together from day one and suddenly experiencing and appreciating that actually what they do in one country, you can learn from people in another country and vice versa. And I think the key thing, and I've learned this over a number of years, is you've got to appreciate and understand that you have differences in how people work, live, how they vote, how they act, and so on. And you have to be able to appreciate those differences. And if you like, make sure that you have a very neutral lens. Because if you don't have that neutral lens as program director, as teachers, and so on, then the danger is that then the audience is saying, yeah, but everything you look at is from the perspective of the UK or North America or something like that. So I think it's very much having that appreciation of the differences right from the beginning and not being afraid of them. Celebrate the differences, and then everybody starts to get that richer experience.
Okay, thank you so much, Julian. It's very, very insightful. And Rachel, just to come back to a point that you just made about how the degree is the starting point. What we start to see more and more now in institutions is that thinking holistically about the student journey, not from trying to find a student, manage service, treat them well when they're there, and then tap them up in the future to come back or give back. It also starts to become a continuum, because your alumni can be prospective students. They can be the ambassadors for your IP transfer programs. They can be coaches for incubators or future teachers, like in Julian's case. So everybody has a different role, and you just look at the apparition of a person at a certain point in time, which can be multiple types, right? So somebody can be both at the same time a faculty member, even an alum, and prospective students, including their assorted families. So we're starting to see that some of the silos in institutions that used to be there with department heads and separate systems for recruitment and admissions, when they now start to look at, well, are these students the profile that will be successful here? And as they study, will they be an active part of the community, and how can we make sure that they have the best experience? Because myself and many other people that have studied, let's say in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, we were basically, especially in the public education system in the Netherlands, you were herded together at a certain time and for a certain cohort and program, weren't particularly personally treated or listened to until you were an alumni, and then it was like, oh well, you've been such a fantastic brand ambassador, or could you become a fantastic brand ambassador? And you think, well, while I was there with you, you didn't seem to care, and now all of a sudden you're reaching out. So that's an interesting perspective that we have on that. So then maybe one to start with for you, Rachel, an audience question again, and thank you for those, is how far do you agree that students are moving to treat education institutions as a regular business from a customer perspective? And how are you responding to a shift towards a more discerning customer, between quotes?
Yeah, it is definitely a challenge, because obviously our students are our customers to a certain extent, but it's not a transactional relationship, definitely. So we select, we judge, we test, we evaluate our own customers every step of the way. So this is a very special relationship. we definitely find that the expectation on full-time programs of for the institution to really have a very holistic approach in terms of covering all sorts of topics, which can be the academic journey, but also well-being. There is a huge expectation that we take care of our community, which we definitely already did, but there is more of an expectation around this, that we should be actually taking care of the well-being, the mental health, the relationships between students as well, sometimes where we find ourselves getting involved. So I think there definitely is this expectation that goes beyond the academic experience from our students. There always has been a big expectation around career support. INSEAD has a very strong career center, so development center. So this is also something that's very strong, and people looking often for career transition across geographies, across sectors and functions. So this is definitely something that we see staying and being sustained. But yeah, definitely people looking for a really high value experience in terms of every aspect of their life. So this is maybe a shift that's happened and maybe taken us by surprise in some instances where we weren't necessarily expecting. We didn't necessarily have things in place to provide the support that students thought that we should. So this is a shift. I think another point that's really interesting is kind of looking at community, and the lifelong learning is also part of kind of being part of a community. And I think something that's really important for business schools to think about is what their core values are, and that's going to carry people through this lifelong journey. So this is something that I think is really important to know, kind of what your core values are. INSEAD was a business school that was set up after World War II in a very specific context by Europeans that had been in the States and kind of brought the MBA to Europe and trying to bring people together. So this has always been, our value has been to bring people together from all over the world to transform business and society. And this is something that was relevant then and is still relevant today, and really going deeper into business as a force for good. That has become even more prominent, I think, as we've moved through the past 2 years, and we can see that the year ahead is also, this is going to be very important to our community. And I think it's been a very solid base for people to come together and feel belonging, and that they are able to participate as part of this community to do good, and to maybe use their positions that have been maybe facilitated by the education that they've had, the network that they've had, but now to actually give back to society in a broader sense, and also be very invested in the next generation of students. And we definitely see at INSEAD that the alumni community have been incredibly invested as we went through the pandemic in reaching out to people, in supporting scholarships, in making it possible for those talented people around the world to access this kind of education that can enable them to become somebody who can transform society as we move through the next generation. So our alumni, a lot of the prominent alumni that we have are maybe at the end of their journey, but very invested in the future. And I think this is very important, to use the whole, look at the whole of the community and have these loops that are coming back around and supporting the next generation.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Yeah, so just going back to the consumer between quotes, one of the shifts that I've already seen is that typically the web properties of institutions would be very much offer based. So welcome to the University of X. Are you undergraduate, graduate, or postgraduate, or career learning, etc.? And we're starting to now see already websites that start basically with the question of who do you want to become, what do you want to become, how do you want to transform, and then you're guided through the offerings, because it's no longer indeed cookie cutting and saying, okay, you're all going to be in the 4-year degree or the 2-year postgrad. But maybe people can pick and choose, take a few models, go back to work, come back to study, finish their degree, be a business coach, etc. So that personalization is now also starting to come through on the journeys that they have on the web properties. So with a few minutes to go, we've had 2 additional questions from the audience. One is about sort of the practices that were introduced during the pandemic that you think are going to be here to stay. But I think we've already heard a lot about the diversification of your offerings, more treating the customers as customers, if you will, and understanding and reflecting the investment they make, competing online, etc. But I think really a good one, also given current affairs in the world today, is your comment, Rachel, about business schools being a force for good. So maybe a question first, Julian, for you, and then Rachel, maybe you can bring us home, as they say in America. Do you think business schools have a role to play in addressing inequality and other social issues? And if so, should these issues be at the forefront of the curriculum?
I think business schools, like any universities or any parts of universities, have that role. And I think that if you can, especially through DT, more democratize the learning opportunities, then you are giving opportunities for more people. And the sort of teaching that we deliver is quite different to the sort of teaching that I might have delivered 15 years ago. I'm much more focused on the planet and the people in the planet, and we're much more focused on the ethics of doing business as opposed to the shareholder value being the exclusive thing that you looked at. Do I think this should be the foundation of the curriculum? No, I don't, because what you're doing is you're then creating a false scenario. The reality is that most people who work in small businesses, medium-sized or big businesses, have to work in organizations that return a profit, because if they don't return a profit, they can't pay themselves, they can't pay their staff. If they can't pay their staff, they can't help to rid the world of inequalities, because they're not distributing value to the various stakeholders that they have. So for me, at the heart of what we do, we must enable the students who come through our business schools to be effective leaders in their fields, so that they are creating great value for their customers and for their employees and for their other stakeholders. What we've got to do is, though, make sure that we're encouraging them for them to do it in the right way. And I think we have a much greater appreciation of what the right way is. But if we make the right way the hero and everything else the follower, then I think we create a false scenario. And then it's a contrived form of learning, which I personally don't support.
Do well to do good. I like it. Rachel, maybe some final words, and then I'll hand it back to David to wrap up the webinar.
Yeah, very much agree with what Julian has just said. I think maybe something that business schools can look at is how do they embed this more into the curriculum. So as we say, it's not that this is driving the curriculum, but it should be embedded into the curriculum. So sustainability, definitely very, very important. And how do business schools embed that into the curriculum? And I think another thing that we need to do as an industry is to really work on how we evaluate business programs and work with those leading ranking organizations as much as we can, to also make sure that we are being evaluated against criteria that is maybe a little bit broader than it has been in the past, and also embeds these topics as being essential to be covered, and to as we say, to build the leaders of tomorrow that are going to have this responsibility to bring this into their companies and to make sure that ethics, sustainability, and are taken into account in the way that they do business, and it is seen as being valuable as well by the companies.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And there is, as I saw on a T-shirt yesterday on the street, there is no Planet B. So we better get this right. And I think we all have an important role to play. So Julie and Rachel, really want to thank you very much about giving your insight, being, like I would say, open and spontaneous about your challenges and the opportunities that we see ahead of us, and how you've been able to guide your respective institutions through the pandemic storm. And with that, I will hand it back to David. And thanks again for your participation.
Thank you very much, Bas. And thank you once again to our sponsor, Salesforce, for helping us organize such a fantastic session. And thank you, Julian and Rachel, for sharing such deep and fascinating insight with us this afternoon. I'd like to thank all the audience for joining us as well, and for your brilliant questions and interactions. I think you certainly challenged a lot of the speakers today with some of your thoughts. I hope everyone enjoyed the session as much as I did, but if you missed anything, don't worry, because the recording and the slides will all be available in the post-events communications and on both the AMBA and BGA websites in about a week. So that's all from us. Thank you once again, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.